Yo, what's going on, guys? It's Houston Sports Talk, and the Houston Texans have finally won a game. It's been weeks, it's been months, and the Texans get their second win of the season. Man, what a game! What an entertaining, stressful this was as a Texans fan. And all I can say is Christmas came early for me and all the other Texans fans. For multiple ways for me, get a Texans win on Christmas Eve. And also, the Jags take first place in the division. I know that as a Texans fan, I shouldn't be rooting for other teams in the division. But personally, I do not want to see. The Texans are not in the playoffs, of course, and I want it to be an interesting playoffs. And to me, Tennessee is just not an interesting team in the playoffs. They were not an interesting team even when they had Ryan Tannehill. Now he's out for the season, and Malik Willis is the quarterback. They're just not an entertaining team. Even though they're in our division, I like Trevor Lawrence. I think he's a great quarterback. I think he's went through a lot this year. I think he's had a great second year, and I think they could be a scary team in the playoffs. And I predicted them to win the division before the season started, before the preseason started. I saw Tennessee's schedule. I saw the lack of depth that they needed. There a lot of issues with their offense. I saw it, and I thought Jacksonville would be really good this year. So, not only do I want a prediction to stand through and get a prediction right, but I also want to see this Jaguars team in the playoffs. I want to see what Lawrence can do in the playoffs. But as the Texans get this win, yes, I'm excited that the Jaguars are leading the division. I'm a little scared of, with now this win, we are 2-12-1. The Bears lost to the Bills today, 35-13. They are now 3-12. Bears' final two games against the Lions and the Vikings. Texans' final two games against the Jags and the Colts. Texans should lose to the Jaguars. It could be a close game if they play the way they played the last three games, but probably will lose because the Jags are fighting and fighting and fighting. Now, I don't want to. I could be wrong, but probably the Bears lose both of their final games. The Vikings could be that Vikings game, that last game of the season could be tricky because the Vikings could be resting their star players because of it being the last game of the season, them already clinching everything. So maybe they rest all their players. The Bears get the win. But if the Texans, that last game of the season, the Colts, we know how the Colts have been this season, one of the worst offenses in the NFL. I'm just circling and I'm looking. What if the Bears lose their final two games of the season and the Texans win one out of two of their last two games? Then I think if that would happen, the Bears would get the first overall pick and the Texans would get the second. Which honestly, I know this is gonna sound bad as well, but I really don't care if the Texans get the first overall pick, because what I want the Texans to do with their first first round pick is to draft a quarterback. And if the Bears get the first overall pick, we know they're not going to draft a quarterback. The Bears have Justin Fields, one of the best talents in the NFL right now. We've seen how Justin Fields has looked this season. He's had a great year. So the Bears are a team at the first overall pick who they would probably pick Will Anderson at 1. That's pretty much a guarantee they'd pick Will Anderson at 1. So I think if the Texans were to get the second overall pick, they would still get a quarterback. I don't think that affects them. The Bears, they are a team with a scary quarterback at Justin Fields. So I don't see it at all happening where the Texans I don't see it at all where we're getting the second overall pick would hurt us. If it was a different team getting the first overall pick, I would be upset. Like if it was you get the Rams and the Broncos, if they were to get the first overall pick, which I don't think they can anymore, because maybe one of them has a shot because those two teams play each other tomorrow. So one of those teams tomorrow, the Rams or the Broncos, will be eliminated from getting the number one overall pick. But I'm just gonna wrap this part of it up with the Texans. The second overall pick would not hurt us, but the first overall pick would be nice just to guarantee everything. All right, let's get in the game as the Texans won 19-14. I know I was talking there for a while, so the first was this the first drive? No, it was the second drive for the Titans. Derrick Henry went for a 48-yard rushing touchdown. Randy Bullock would make the extra point, 7-0. Now, the Texans would have a weird next drive to put it in the end zone. Well, actually, I would not say put it in the end zone because they had a fight to get in the end zone. Davis Mills runs in, but he fumbles the ball, and Rex Burkhead recovers, and the Texans score a touchdown. So they tied up at 7. Now, with 6 minutes and 50 seconds to go in the second quarter, Farrenberry would make a 25-yard field goal, and the Texans would have a 10-7 lead going in halftime. Now, the Titans' first drive of the third quarter, Malik Willis would have a 14-yard rush. Bullock's extra point would be good, and then Tennessee would take a 14-10 lead. That was our only score in the third. The Texans would get a little bit closer in the fourth with 7 minutes to go. Farrenberry would make a 22-yard field goal, make it 13-14, and the Texans would stop the Titans and have a 2-minute and 15-second drive. Davis Mills with a huge touchdown pass to Brandon Cooks for 6 yards. Now the Texans would go for 2. It would be an incomplete pass to Amari Rodgers, and that there's your score, 19-14. So what a game by the Texans. And in those final 2 minutes, Tennessee would have the ball twice and throw 2 interceptions. So Texans defense would have 2 interceptions in this game. 3 turnovers overall because the Titans also did fumble in this one. Davis, let's go over the game leaders, passing leaders. Davis was 17 for 28 with 178 passing yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Also, Jeff Driscoll threw 40, so the Texans combined did for, 218, I think, passing yards as a team. Malik Willis was 14 for 23 with 98 passing yards and 2 interceptions. Rushing yards for the Texans, Royce Freeman had 16 carries, 32 yards. Derrick Henry had 23 carries, 126 yards, and 1 touchdown. Receiving yards, Philip Dorsett had some nice catches in this one, 2 really nice catches for the Texans. 3 receptions and 45 yards. Robert Woods had 4 receptions and 30 yards. Let's go to the full box score. Like I said, Jeff Driscoll was 3 for 4 with 40 passing yards. Malik Willis, QB runner today, was 7 carries, 43 yards. Traylon Burks also had a big 15-yard run, wide receiver. Dare Ungobamwe had 8 carries and 28 yards. Mills had 4 carries, 8 yards. Then let's go to the Texans. Other receivers besides Dorsett, Akins had 3 receptions, 39 yards. Amari Rodgers had his biggest reception of his career, had 1 reception and 37 yards. Big catch to get the Texans in the goal line. Brandon Cooks, in his first game back in 3 games, had 4 receptions, 34 yards, and 1 touchdown. Chris Moore, who was a little quiet after having 2 excellent games the last 2 games, but with Brandon Cooks, with Philip Dorsett having a big game, Amari Rodgers having a nice game, and Brandon Cooks being back. Chris Moore was a little quiet today. 2 receptions, 25 yards. And then Brevin Jordan had 2 receptions and 21 yards. Rex Burkhead had 2 receptions and 7 yards. Royce Freeman had 1 reception and 6 yards. And Jeff Driscoll had 1 reception and 4 yards. I was talking about in my preview yesterday that I want to see a pass or 2 thrown to Jeff Driscoll, like the Saints throw to Taysom Hill, and the Texans did it. I know it was only 4 yards, only 1 play, but I'm glad the Texans tried that out, and it worked. We got 4 yards out of it. So yeah, let's go into the fumbles. Now the Texans recovered a fumble today. Jonathan Grenard recovered the fumble, his first game back in a while. He recovered the fumble, and that was a Derrick Henry who fumbled. And yeah. Let's go to the tackles. Jalen Petrie led the Texans in tackles with 9 today. Christian Kirksey had 6. Texans had 8 tackles for loss today and 4 sacks. Monster day for the defense, and 2 interceptions and 1 fumble. Texans defense was going crazy today. Christian Harris, who had a monster game, he had 6 tackles and his first career interception as well. Agabina Okongwo, who had a monster game as well. He had 5 tackles, 2 sacks, and 3 tackles for loss. Tavir Thomas, who returned as well. So did him and Jonathan Grenard. Both of them returned from the IR. He returned, and he had 5 tackles. Racine Green had 4. Roy Lopez had 4 tackles and a tackle for loss. Jonathan Owens had 3 tackles and a sack. and Malik Collins, who had 3 tackles and 2 tackles for loss. Jonathan Gennard had 3 tackles, 1 tackle for loss, and a fumble recovery. Blake Cashman had the other sack as well, so 4 sacks for the Texans. Owens, Cashman, and 2 by Okongwu. I think I said that right. And then I think that might have been it for the tackles for loss. Kurt Heinisch had a tackle for loss as well, so those are all the Texans' tackles for loss. Interceptions, Christian Harris gets his first career interception with a 20-yard return as well. Great play by Christian Harris. Jalen Petrie gets an interception as well on the last play of the game to seal it for the Texans. I think that might be his 4th or 5th pick of the season. 2 really good rookies today, and 2 very good pieces of our defense as well. I'm really excited to see how Christian Harris develops next season. I think Christian Harris is one of our best players on defense. Obviously, you got Jonathan Grenard, you got Jalen Petrie, you got Derek Stingley, and then you got Christian Harris. So I'm really excited for what that brings. I'm really excited for Christian Harris, Jalen Petrie. I think the Texans, honestly, in my opinion, I think defensively last year's draft, I think the Texans did an excellent job with defensively when it comes to that. I mean, you drafted Harris, you drafted Petrie, and you drafted Stingley. So I think the Texans have done an amazing job when it comes to our defensive draft last year. Offense was a different story. We drafted Kenyon Green, who's just been an absolute. I'm not going to call him a bust yet, but he's been awful this year with penalties and all that stuff. And John Minchie, I'm not going to call him anything because he has never played yet. But I think on our draft for offensively, our offense. We didn't draft much offense in the draft last year, but none of it's really produced. I mean, I think John Mechie's gonna be great once he touches the field. Hopefully next year from leukemia, I think that he'll be great. But Texans, I think that their defense has massively improved from the draft this year. Christian Harris, Jalen Petrie, and Derek Stingley that's not at all as well. I mean, there's a couple other guys the Texans drafted. Thomas Booker has been decent. He had 2 tackles today, so I'm really impressed with the way the Texans defense has looked in the last couple of weeks. I think the defense has actually really progressed this season. I know our defense hasn't been that great from time to time, but there's been a lot of times where the defense has done really good. With turnovers, the turnovers have been higher than ever in the last couple of years, with interceptions and fumbles. So I've been really impressed with the Texans defense this year. You guys let me know what you guys thought about the game. That's it for the video. Hope you guys enjoyed, and peace out. Go Texans.